Hey guys, thank you guys for joining me on another episode of Self-Reflection Podcast. I hope that this conversation finds you in the best light. Today we are going to get into a pretty interesting conversation today. But before we get into our conversation and I introduce our guest for Self-Reflection Podcast, I want to ask you, if you have yet to subscribe to Self-Reflection Podcast, please go ahead and hit that subscription button. I greatly appreciate it as we look to continue to grow our community here. Also, if you have subscribed to Self-Reflection Podcast, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for sharing your time with us. And also thank you for watching Self-Reflection Podcast. And I want to remind you, if you have yet to create a moment for self-reflection, please go ahead and do so. It could be today. It could be during this episode. You could pause it, come back, or it could be sometime later on this week. I think self-reflection is one of those things that can allow us to heal ourselves, move forward, and also find clarity in our own self, right? So thank you so much again for joining me on Self-Reflection Podcast. We're going to get into our conversation. Today we are going to be talking to Dr. Huang. Thank you so much for joining us on Self-Reflection Podcast.
Thank you, Lira. Great to meet you. Thank you for the invitation. Look forward to a great conversation today.
Yeah, I'm excited. I usually love when the guests get to share their own background, right? A little bit of them, a bio. For some reason, I find that more personal than me usually reading off my phone or reading off my notes. So please, can you share a little bit more about your background, professional background, so our family and friends here can understand a little bit about you?
Thank you. I was born in Taiwan, and my family is a beneficiary of the 1965 Immigration Act, possibly the most important federal legislation to diversify the makeup of this country, which I'll circle back later, really very much related to the work I do today.
Yes.
My family came, four of us, my parents, myself, and brother, and we came during the martial law era of Taiwan, which was between 1949 and 1987. To escape potential political persecution.
Yes.
As my grandfather was one of the first pro-democracy activists to be on the government's execution list. So I would say, that particular experience, social justice was born in my DNA when I did not know it as a child. So I'm originally from Taiwan and came to this country at age 12 and grew up here.
Yeah. That was a lot to hear. And just going back to Taiwan as a little girl, right? What was life like for you in that space?
As a young child, I did not know my family lived in a politically oppressive state. Life was blissful, and life was very joyous. I grew up in I would call it loosely village setting. It was modern city. Whom I consider my family were my parents, my brother, many extended family members, the neighbors. My father was a physician, worked in a clinic, the patients, and my classmates. So I felt and was very safe to roam around from my particular perspective. Lots of great food. So I felt like I grew up in a lot of safety and shelter. It did not feel like a politically oppressive environment.
Okay.
The difficulty, I think, were really experienced by the adults. And lots of great food.
Yes. Yeah. And migrating here from an early age, right? Because I'm also an immigrant in this country and I came here as a young girl. Migrating here, what were some culture shocks that you felt coming to the U.S.?
What I did not know as a child is I grew up in a very shelter environment. If that's all you know, you don't know you grew up in a shelter environment, right? The environment I grew up in, because of the martial law era, there were a lot of political restrictions that I experienced, but I did not know they were not okay or not normal. For example, starting 7th grade, all the children in the entire country have to have the same haircut. All the girls, haircut 1 centimeter above the end of your earlobe. And all the boys, entire country, buzz cut. Everybody in the entire country wore the same uniform, all the schools, with 6-digit. Everybody was assigned a 6-digit number, and the 6-digit number had to be stitched to uniform. So just to give you a small glimpse of, I thought that was normal, of course. It was also illegal to speak Taiwanese in a Taiwanese school in Taiwan. Think about that. Just reflect on that statement a little bit. So that is one of the aspects of martial law that I experienced. Again, I thought it was normal. How that affects a person is you speak one language at home, not allowed to speak that language, which is the majority language at school. Then you grow up feeling ashamed of your language, of your culture, of your identity, which applies to many communities and many folks who came to this country, of course. Yeah. So getting back to your question, culture shock. At that time, there was no direct flight between Taiwan and the United States. So we had a stopover in Tokyo. I experienced and stepped on snow for the first time in my life. Where I grew up in Taiwan, there was no snow. And I remember the shock on my feet when I stepped, and I thought, why is it so cold? That was my first culture shock in Japan. Then coming to the United States, I would say everything was a shock. At that time, the very first apartment we lived in, 4 of us lived in a small studio apartment, had a Murphy bed that folded out of the wall. We lived near Powell and Pine, and I had to take the cable car to school every single day. So it was shocking to take the cable car. It was shocking to go to a school with no ESL program, and I would just throw in. And a lot of the kids in the school actually spoke another kind of Chinese, Cantonese. So I started learning Cantonese very quickly. I experienced school breakfast and school lunch for the first time. And I would say everything was a shock, but mainly the language and the culture of, initially I found the kids being very loud, right? Because I grew up in a country where kids were very, very, very obedient.
Yes.
And it felt just physical shock, emotional shock. And my parents, of course, did not have the experience and the capacity to help us with, I wouldn't even say assimilation, but just sort of like transition into that particular society. What I did not know at that time was they were living under tremendous political terror, because all 4 of us came to this country legally, but my father left Taiwan illegally because physicians were not allowed to leave the country, because physicians had played an instrumental role in the democracy movement. And so another time we'll go further into that. And so my father was, you can imagine leaving the country with a fake passport and so forth. It was terrifying for him.
Yes. I see myself in you when you talked about going into a school system and, trying, not, like you said, not trying to assimilate, but trying to find yourself in that space when you have lived a totally different life. For any young immigrant girl or boy that is watching this conversation and they are new to this country and about to go through the school system or any other system that we have in this country, what is some supportive advice you have for them in that space based on your experience and other people's experience that you have seen?
The best support really comes from the family. In my case, my family was not set up to give me that support. At that age, I don't know if I could have done anything different, as I went through 4 different middle schools in 2 years, 3 in this country. Each one was drastically different. First one in Taiwan, second one in urban San Francisco, primarily Cantonese. Third in El Cerrito, pretty mixed environment in middle of busing. So there was a lot of conflicts between the kids who were in El Cerrito and the kids who were busing from Richmond. And the fourth was a primarily white school in the suburbs. So I would say the kind of help that I experience if I were to advise a child, right? I would say I would advise the parents. Try to, even if you don't understand what your kids are going through, try to listen and not judge what your kids are going through, and try to educate yourself in the environment that your kids are in. The parents don't really have any. Oftentimes, the parents do not have interest in assimilation if they're here and they're planning to move back anyway. And for the children's own survival, they needed to find a way to assimilate in order to survive, right? And for the child, by the time I came, I was in seventh grade. I say if I were to talk to my seventh grade myself, I would say look for adults in your school who is willing to help you. I remember through my middle school and high school years, I had few ESL teachers who were really great. Not common, but really great. And beyond the ESL education, I think I would have reached out to them, stayed in touch with them. And also, as much as a child could, I would advise the child to find activities that help you feel safe, that help you feel grounded, that gives you routine. And eventually I did. It was music. So music, I studied piano, when I was in middle school and high school, and it saved my life. Gave me a regular routine, practiced piano every day. My piano teacher was wonderful and compassionate, really was my second mother. She was really great. And she also, music gave me a creative outlet and was my best friend. Something I could confide in, and I was able to achieve excellence in that arena. And it was a platform for me to express many, many, many emotions that I couldn't express at home, could not find the words to express, could not express at school, and it was very reliable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I definitely do agree with you when it comes to involving yourself, especially as an immigrant girl or boy, involving yourself in extracurriculum, because basketball became my music for me, right? That's why I found my community and found my voice as well. Thank you guys so much for joining us on Self Reflection Podcast. I hope that you guys are enjoying this conversation. I want to thank all of you that have subscribed to Self Reflection Podcast, and also want to remind anyone that is watching Self Reflection Podcast for the first time or have yet to subscribe, please go ahead and hit the subscription button as we look to continue to grow our community here. I greatly appreciate it. Let's get back into our conversation. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the first thing I want to talk to you about is healing, right? As we are on this conversation with finding music as a space, your safe space, right? When it comes down to art and culture, how can one begin to find healing in that space?
I'll step back by saying that many of us who need healing do not know that we are in pain and healing. Because we're not professional psychologists and psychiatrists. Yes. You just feel something is off, right? So as a teenager, when I practiced the piano every day, 7 days a week, and experiencing daily healing from that musical practice, I did not realize I was experiencing healing through art. In retrospect, of course, that is what I was undergoing.
Yes.
So I think your question was
How can one begin to find healing through art?
Well, I think you have to kind of try it out. There's no magic formula. Something that is healing for me may not be healing for you. I can say for many, many people on this earth,
Yes.
arts and culture is very healing. And later on, I'll talk a little bit about my work at War Arts West. That is the work of so many hundreds of cultural artists. And I would say artistically, like I said a few minutes ago, many artistic practices allows us to express feelings we cannot express otherwise.
Yeah.
A lot of times that's what healing is. I have been muzzled. I cannot express my feelings. I need to express my feeling, maybe through singing, maybe through dancing, and maybe through a lot of the culturally specific music, dance forms that I support now
Yeah.
at War Arts West is also about through culturally specific art, music, dance, otherwise, we connect with other human beings. Connection, that social connection with other human beings, when it's positive connection, is deeply healing. It helps us feel love, what every human being wants to feel. Fundamentally is, I want to feel heard, I want to feel seen. When you feel heard and seen consistently, there's healing. That's what Oprah always said. After 25 years, I saw her closing show. She said the number one thing she learned after interviewing people for 25 years is universal of all of her guests. I want to feel heard. I want to feel seen. Yeah. That is healing. So I think that answered your question.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree. And I feel like that's where Self-Reflection Podcast also kind of comes in. We find that human part of each other within our conversation and hopefully with the family of Self-Reflection Podcast that is watching as well. And you talked about World of Art West, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about your work over there and what the mission is behind you guys' organization?
I'll talk a little bit about the overview of the organization, then I'll talk about how I came to the organization.
Absolutely.
Where Arts West is a 48-year-old San Francisco-based arts organization. We serve the largest world dance network in the country through performance presentations, artist service programs, focus on economic empowerment of cultural artists, and collective advocacy. So that's a summary of the organization. The organization was created in 1978 as a response to the 1965 Immigration Act, and I will explain. Prior to 1965 Immigration Act, the immigration quota of this country dictated that the annual immigrants coming to this country could not upset the existing ethnic percentages of this country. And therefore, most of the immigrants prior to 1965 came from Western Europe. It was 1965 Immigration Act in that era of so many civil rights legislations, right? That really opened the borders.
Yeah.
I am sure your family is a beneficiary, directly or indirectly beneficiary of the Immigration Act. In the beautiful Bay Area, we have so many wonderful restaurants. That's really possible directly or indirectly because of the 1965 Immigration Act. So in the 1970s, City of San Francisco, specifically Grants for the Arts in San Francisco, saw this dramatic diversification of population in the Bay Area and decided to create a visibility platform called the San Francisco Ethnic Dance Festival in 1978. It was the first city-sponsored multicultural dance festival in the country. And the goal of it was to have an annual performance opportunity for so many of these cultural artists coming from various countries. And many of them were preeminent artists who were former leaders of national dance companies or principal dancers of national companies. And they were unknown. Maybe teaching, maybe not teaching. Maybe teaching in some kind of church basement, in garage, outside in Golden Lake Park. So this was a wonderful idea and also a way to shepherd some money towards the artists. And the hope was eventually to, through this visibility platform, that a lot of the cultural dance groups, the cultural artists, will become financially self-sustaining, which had mixed success. I'll talk about a little bit. And I started as a volunteer for the organization 30 years ago. That's how long I've been involved. And in the 1990s, I myself was introduced to the cultural dance worlds of the Bay Area. My very first teacher was Miss Blanche Brown. She, preeminent legacy artist, a Haitian dance company. And 1995, I had an opportunity through California Arts Council grant to begin studying Afro-Cuban dance. So that's my main concentration. Last 30 years, I've been a very serious student of Afro-Cuban dance, and I've been 4 separate Afro-Cuban dance companies. Really changed my life. It has been my church, healing space, my community, and my creative outlet, and my friends. 30 years ago was also the first time I really, really saw how much immigrant cultural artists really struggle with basic resources. How to take tuition, how to book a space like a Malanga Center, how to produce, promote shows, how to sell tickets, how to enroll their kids in kindergarten, how to navigate racial discrimination, when the police is racially profiling, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. At that time, I promised myself, really 30 years ago, someday I would find a way to really figure out a way to support and uplift these cultural artists that have really transformed my life. And that is the work I am doing today. Directly with World Arts Fest, in 2015, I entered the organization as a grant writer, and then following year, development director. 2019, I was appointed the executive director, and my current title is the chief executive officer. When I was appointed the executive director, it was a historic moment because our community of over 600 dance companies is over 85% people of color. White-led for 41 years until I was appointed. The first person of color, first person that comes from our cultural arts community, first immigrant to lead this organization, and the only one still. So lots of revolutionary changes under my leadership. There's still a long ways to go.
Oh my goodness, that's beautiful. I want to ask you maybe a personal question here. Reflecting back on this miraculous journey that you have gone through with this organization, being the first person of color in there, and let's not forget a woman in that space, what would you tell your younger self that came from a culture that was more strict, had very little freedom, but here you are able to expand through this space?
Before I say that, I feel like I want to elaborate a little bit of the journey.
Yes. And by the way, I'm enjoying this. I'm so sorry.
No, great. I'm enjoying this too. So 2019, I was very excited to finally lead this organization serving the community of artists that have really transformed my life, right? Who gets to say that, right? That's my W-2 job. Yet, I was handed an organization in a 6-figure debt. And the pandemic, I did not know was right around the corner. I therefore had to 1 month after I was hired as executive director, I had to lay off almost my entire team. I had to approach the landlord to break our lease because we could not afford to pay the $3,000 a month rent. And then we had to, move everything out, put most things in storage. And many, many, many administrative files were in disarray. And we had owed that year's festival's artist $100,000. And there was a $40,000 credit card debt. So So a lot of the transformative journey was nitty gritty, vacuuming the office, putting the organization back to financial footing,
Yes.
and then being able to really grow the programs according to the artist needs, which I will come back. Let me actually directly answer your question, which was no one in my upbringing, no adults during my upbringing told me I could create a vision for my own life, nor obviously the pathway towards that vision, right?
Yeah.
And like many immigrant parents, my parents had very limited knowledge and exposure to the country they were in. And of course, when you grow up under political terror, all you want for your children is safety and security, and actually not to be visible. For most of my life, my parents told me not to vote because their experience was if you vote for the wrong person, you go to jail and sometimes die.
Yeah.
Until Barack Obama was elected. After that, they're like, yes, please vote. So I've seen their transformation as well, right? My parents passed away the last couple of years. I would say to my younger self, whatever your heart tells you, it is not only your truth, it is true. It is your destiny. If you really feel, when I was in high school, I really wanted to go into the arts. I was pretty good piano player, if I may say. That's the pathway I wanted to take. And because of my family, I went into the sciences, both to follow a family path, but also my parents felt that was the safest way for me. Moreover, I did not think I could choose my own path. That never crossed my mind until much later in life. So I would tell that girl, my teenage self, you can choose your life. And if you want to stay healthy, that life you're supposed to lead will ultimately find you. The spiritual journey you're supposed to be on can be manifested in many physical ways.
Yeah.
If you do not walk on that path, you will be sick. And I've seen my family members not walking that path, getting cancer. It's like disease will find you. We all have a particular journey. And I love that visual. One of my staff members tells me of like a spiral, that you experience your life and you make a circular round, and somehow you always come back to the same point.
Yeah.
And it is our job as adults to realize and find what that point is. I now realize what that point is for me. That point is authenticity. So this is why throughout my life, my own authenticity has been disputed because I had to exercise this muscle to speak my own truth and be authentic in order to not just live with myself, but to be the most impactful person that I could be. And that is the phase of life that I'm living today. It takes a while, it's not a linear route to get there, right?
Absolutely.
It's like you do this and that, and eventually, hopefully, you kind of realize that. And I would also tell my younger self to connect with adults who believe in you. Even if your closest adults, like your family members, dispute them. If in your heart you feel like, wow, in that case for me, it was my piano teacher. If this adult really believes in me, then try your best to connect with that person and let that person affirm you. And every bit of affirmation you can get is collected inside your heart. That never leaves you. It becomes your fortification to help you go through many challenges in life. Even if you don't realize it's there, it's always there, that fortification.
Absolutely. We'll be right back. Thank you guys so much for joining me with Self Reflection Podcast. I appreciate all of you guys being here. I want to remind you, if you've yet to subscribe to Self Reflection Podcast, please go ahead and hit that subscription button. I would greatly appreciate it as we continue to grow our community here. We're going to get right back into our podcast episode. Dr. Ayan, thanks so much for joining me on Self Reflection Podcast. I am enjoying this conversation. I want to lean a little bit more into your leadership. Being able to take the company from where your organization from where it was and develop it into a more recognized organization where people can build trust back into the organization. What have you learned as a leader that has allowed you to continue to grow as a person and also being able to lead others into the direction that you see for yourself and for the organization?
What I've really learned is in order for a leader to be a truly effective leader and trusted leader, you must do the personal work to realize, to understand what your journey is. You don't necessarily need to be doing your life's work at your organization, which I am doing. I'm very grateful. But you must have very clear reason on why you are at that organization. If you do not have clarity of that reason, you will not be an effective leader.
How has your leadership allow you to grow as a person and also being able to take the organization from where it is? How has your vision also support other people as a leader?
Very important for a leader to be a great listener. So as I stated, I was appointed the executive director September of 2019. Organization was in disarray, and of course, we experienced this unprecedented global event called the pandemic, right? We could not do business as usual in so many different ways. So I took a lot of time to listen to the community. We had offered them this beautiful festival that people really did love, the San Francisco, I think, Dance Festival, that was financially not sustainable. And during the pandemic, what so many artists told me was all of our paid performances dried up, right? And we could not go back home, whatever countries they were from, to visit family. Very difficult to send my family back home. What the cultural artists told me over and over again is they really needed to find ways to gain support on financial resources, financial sustainability. And so I really thought long and hard, like, what is that? Our festival model, again, beloved by many audience members, but the model was, each year paying different groups to perform for 10 minutes and, one-time payment. Because we had many auditioning groups, majority of the groups that auditioned did not get into the festival. And it was, became very competitive because the auditions were very popular. And so I thought long and hard, like, what does it mean for us to launch really an economic empowerment program for cultural artists, to put more money in cultural artists' hands? I'm a longtime grant writer. That is a world I'm familiar with. And I saw many cultural dance groups were highly eligible for grants funding, but we're not getting funding. Yeah. So I felt like I needed to launch a program to connect the dots. I call that program Grants Accelerator Program. It is literally training artists how to access grants dollars, private foundations, government, and so forth. We are now in our fifth round. That program has raised about $1.4 million for artists. Each year we serve about 10 to 12 cultural arts groups. There are many legacy groups that have been around for 20, 30 plus years that are getting grants funding for the very first time. Many of them have transitioned from all volunteer run, zero budget, to paying artistic director for the first time, hiring their first arts administrators, being able to one Mexican dance group, all youth in San Francisco. They got invited to perform in an international festival in Mexico, allowing few of the dance company members, high school students, to meet their grandparents for the first time in Mexico. Really, really amazing program. Since launching Grand Cicillo program 5 years, we now have two other very impactful economic artist service program. One is Special Arts Commission, where we are supporting multi-year, very large-scale, groundbreaking work that's raised about $600,000-$700,000. And this year, we are grant maker for the first time. We are giving away $1 million this year and next year. So it's being supported by Wallace Foundation. We are giving out grants for the very first time, and it's really changing lives. These are, cultural arts organizations that have been around. Some of them are new, but some of them have been around long, long, long time that are really benefiting from this infusion of dollars. In totality, the Artist Service Program is shepherding about $3 million in cultural artists' hands in about 7 years. This is something I personally would not have dreamed of in 2019. This is beyond what I was able to dream for myself. What I've consistently learned with my leadership at World Arts West is you can set a vision for yourself, and if you're living your true path, your actual potential is beyond the vision you set up for yourself. Last thing I'll say is what I've described is about accessing financial resources that are already there. A few years ago, we started engaging in advocacy. Started with myself really representing World Arts West in a lot of different important spaces, such as being on the board of Dance USA, National Service Organization for Dance, being a board chair, and now being on the board for California for the Arts, which is the largest arts advocacy organization in the state of California. But we're steadily also working on getting artists to serve on boards, commissions, working in philanthropy, and making sure that voices of cultural artists in our communities and cultural advocates are represented in policy, in making decisions on philanthropy, giving away dollars,
Yes.
in organizational leadership, artistic directors, executive directors, CEO, and so forth. And that is very important, or else we continue to shout loudly from the fringes of decision making,
Yeah.
right? So as we advance forward in being able to make decisions, then that's when the true change really happens. But it takes time. I tell my staff all the time, revolution oftentimes looks very boring. It is grunt work. And in fact, oftentimes overnight change is very hard to sustain. It's like a person who overnight becomes a celebrity and falls down, right? Revolution often looks like that email that you just sent out and then got a response, or that report that you spend the last 6 months generating and it's sitting on the website, doesn't seem to be doing anything, but it'll make impact in 2 to 3 years. But in time, you look back and then you think, wow, we're a grant maker. We had our first research project. We're shepherding $3 million to the artist's hands, and we're completely out of debt. Had last 6 years ending consecutive surpluses. It is really amazing. So many organizations are approaching me now. They're viewing the transformation organization as a gold standard that they possibly could approach. Many cultural artists are now approaching me and really just in disbelief. What? That's possible? And in fact, shortly after I became the executive director, many cultural artists contacted me and said, wow, one of us made it. Many of them could not believe that a cultural artist could lead this organization. So a lot of times, decision makers or organization, they give us a ceiling, but it is an artificial ceiling. The ceiling today does not need to be the ceiling tomorrow. In fact, the ceiling that you think exists today may not be the actual ceiling.
And for a mindset, from a mindset perspective, what type of mindset should one have, especially an immigrant, right? Should we have to have such grit to move forward with our own goals, our own dreams, or if we are leaders, to be able to scale in the way that you have, and not per se the same way that you have, but in their own way, but to believe in themselves in that way.
Your question is, should immigrants...
The type of mentality, what kind of mindset should it have? Or what kind of mindset does it take for someone to have such grit? Because I think there was a lot of resilience in your space, right? And of course you didn't do it alone, but being the leader, right? That is something that you get to carry home. If you win, it's on the leader. If you lose, it's still on the leader, right?
A lot of immigration is involuntary, even if it appears voluntary. Sometimes we think, oh, refugees, involuntary path, immigrants, voluntary, this is an artificial, legal separation.
Yeah.
Imagine the number of Americans you encounter who complain about what's wrong with this country, but how many of them actually pack up and leave and move to a different country? It takes extraordinary forces and will to move out. And many people move out of their homeland during extreme duress, like under warfare.
Absolutely.
They don't want to leave. It's just like they have no choice but to leave, right? So I think about so many immigrants I've encountered here. It is a special group of people who have a tremendous grit.
Absolutely.
To, even if you feel like your homeland is unlivable, to actually leave. As a group, like we already have tremendous grit, even if other people, even if the country the second country or the third country we live in do not tell us that message.
Yes.
So I do culturally specific work. I'm a strong believer in us speaking to our ancestors and leaning into our culture. Our culture gives us the power. Our culture gives us the grit. It is there. If you just take time to look into that. I'll give myself an example. Growing up during martial law, I hardly knew anything about my family's history. People just were afraid to speak out. And as an adult in my 30s, I slowly learned about the history of my family, how my father was such a staunch pro-democracy activist. And yet, yes, that's why he went to jail. It was on the government's execution list. And just the resilience of Taiwanese people through the generations.
Yeah.
Through colonization of so many countries. And today, Taiwan, because of China, does not have political relationship with most countries in the world. When Taiwanese athletes go to the Olympics, we're not even allowed to carry flags that say Taiwan, and had to carry this flag called like China Taipei, which is not even a country. And Taiwan is not allowed to join World Health Organization. There's a big beast right next to Taiwan that's just always hovering.
Yeah.
And yet, when you go to Taiwan, it's a prosperous country. Majority of the semiconductor chips in the world are made in Taiwan. Prior to that, before Taiwan went into like this era of computer technology, when it was prior to that, made a lot of sort of industrial products. I think at one time 90% of the bicycles in the world were made in Taiwan. I feel like my people, we just Taiwanese people say, self-reliance, self-agency. We're going to work hard, and we're going to, under the most imperfect circumstances, try to survive, beyond survive, but thrive and be peaceful. It's a very, very safe country when you're there, and very warm. People are very warm when you're there. If you're a foreigner, people are just very warm towards you. I feel like that's my stock.
Yeah.
Those are my people. And I come from that. That is my DNA. And I am my own person, obviously, but that's my DNA. So I was born with grit,
Yes.
I did not know that when I was a child. I was born with grit, man. And my parents, because they grew up under difficult circumstances, they taught me and my brother very strong work ethic. I tell people I work with, no one can outwork me, whether that's good or bad. But that is a lot of immigrants have that. Your work ethic is your friend. Yes, eventually take a vacation. Don't kill yourself, but befriend your work ethic. And actually, if it's difficult by yourself, to believe in your strength, your power, your excellence, your skill set, find other people, even if it's difficult, who believe in you, who can give you those messages of affirmation. Because especially like right now, this is a difficult time for many immigrants. And our government, our federal government is not giving us a message that we are worthwhile. Yeah. We're legal in this country, even if you are. But this too shall pass in time. Finding that grit and perseverance is not miraculous. And it's difficult to find it within yourself. The message must be affirmed by other people. So got to kind of look hard. And if it's hard to find other physical people, books, TV, podcasts, such as this one, that regular infusion of affirmation is so essential in helping all human beings feel a sense of confidence, feel grounded, and feel focused.
I love that. Thank you so much for that. As we also get close to our conversation here, I want to ask you, when it comes down to art and preserving our culture, right, as immigrant, because when we move to this country, we have to also adopt the new culture that we're here. How important is art, especially in the times that we're in right now?
I would say arts and culture.
Yeah.
Right? So many of the cultural artists that I work with have felt a sense of cultural erasure. Whether it is your language, Hawaiian language, in danger of disappearing at one time, or Haitian artists whose artistic practice are rooted in the spiritual practice of voodoo, and just that word being misunderstood.
Yeah.
Or you're a Brazilian dancer and people just misperceive you as, oh, those beautiful, glittery, half-naked girls. Like etc. So many, 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 many. I want to say that many immigrants, children of immigrants, are made to feel othered, like we are foreign, we're outsiders. The truth is, many of these cultures have been in this country for a very long time.
Correct.
Right? Some parts of the country are once Mexico, remember. The artistic practices that we support at War Arts West are very culturally specific, right? So how they're manifested could be singing in a community circle, could be making Hawaiian leis together, could be a dance class, could be performing. All of those activities are all artistic practices, right? Could be storytelling in the Cambodian community trying to heal from the genocide, the Khmer Rouge days. So those kinds of culturally specific artistic practices really affirm the culture we come from and therefore our self-identity. At a younger age, I didn't know anything about the culture I came from, and I felt lost. That affirmation is very important. It's very important that we know where we come from, because where we come from always shape who we are. It helps you understand who you are today, right? And arts and culture, as I told you before, I've been a long time Afro-Cuban dancer. When you step outside of the culture of your origin and learn about other cultures, it widens your perspective, helps you become a more accepting and compassionate individual. And oftentimes you will find similarities in that culture as well.
Absolutely.
For a long time, I was wondering why I was drawn to Cuban culture, Haitian culture, Hawaiian culture, Filipino culture. Oh, I get it now. These countries and the people from those countries are folks who have experienced generations, 100 years of colonization from different colonial sources and of sort of like tropical islands, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it shapes the islands and the countries to a kind of specific way through challenges and colonialism and sometimes political terror. Emerges this modern day resilient culture where the modern day culture is actually the melange. You can see the melange of the colonial forces, and you look at what's considered to be Taiwanese food today in Taiwan. It is melange of Chinese cultural influence from all parts of China. It is it includes Japanese, very strong Japanese influence, as Taiwan was under the control of Japan for 50 years. It has some Dutch influence and some Portuguese influence. There's a dish called Portuguese fried rice in Taiwan. So, taking these influences that were sort of oppressive to your country in the past and making something really beautiful out of it. That is resilience. We have our version of soul food, right? It's like many sort of intestinal parts. They're really great. And that's the resilience of people who historically haven't not had a lot of resources. And so that's all art culture. Art culture is cooking, is storytelling, is singing, and it binds our community together. When you're not allowed to practice your culture and art, oftentimes you feel your identity being wiped away. So it's very important that we fight to retain our cultural practices, retain not to say that those cultural practices stay static, but culture can only stay alive if it continues to evolve. When Chinese food moves from China to Germany, they might use sauerkraut. And when Asian food comes to this country, a lot of it is, those big sushi rolls, they were not invented in Japan, they were invented here. So, culture has to continue to evolve in order for it to continue to be alive and thrive.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for joining us in Self-Reflection Podcast. And also, Dr. Annie, thank you so much for joining us in Self-Reflection Podcast. I've enjoyed this conversation. I feel like you spoke to my younger self and also my future self, and I am extremely grateful for us to connect because I recently, as we get offline, I recently had an event called Afrofest Bay Area. And this Afrofest is an event where I started last year, and then we had our second annual this year. And it's to highlight the African culture, right? And also merge the Bay Area tradition or culture as well into the program. So when you talk about, culture coming from maybe from China, coming here, having a different type of expression, but while still keeping that alive as well. I feel like that's what Afrofest somewhat is, right? Keeping our African tradition alive, sharing that with our community here, while bringing our Bay Area artists into it as well. So for someone like myself that is looking to continue to push our immigrant community, what is some advice you have for a girl like me that is young in this space?
That is,
Young in this space.
and what is your space?
In the art and creation space, while also promoting the African tradition or the immigrant tradition.
For that specific question, I would say Bay Area has a thriving, large, diverse, expansive, intergenerational African diasporic community. Very large, and it's been here for many generations. Someday I'll come back and share a story about how the first generation of folks actually strategize to make Oakland the epicenter of African arts. And I know some of them personally. So I would say a lot of it is going on in the Bay Area already. Make sure I'm sure you already have a lot of connections, but continue to connect with those communities. I can give you, some names if you don't know them already. Visit the Malanga Center regularly. Make sure you go to the Diamanacora's Collage event every March. Fuadi Congo is the North American epicenter of Congolese culture. And, there are many, many, many other groups. Carnival in May is a great connection to be connected with. So make sure you make, those connections and work collaboratively with those communities to, if you want to continue your annual festival, right? Work in collaboration to invite those artists to work with those artists so that your festival becomes part of this large, multicultural, intergenerational African diasporic mosaic that is beautiful, phenomenal artistically, has played a strong role for generations for healing the community and providing that intergenerational glue and cultural preservation, cultural innovation. All of that has been going on for generations, and that's in fact what Arts West has supported for past 5 decades. So I would say the number one task is to continue to connect with people in the African diasporic communities in the Bay Area. And once you meet with them, the collaborations is natural. And also, if you're looking at what other festivals are doing, right? There's a big African festival every year. I think it's in October in Livermore. Look at what they're providing. Is there something you can provide that's unique that other folks are not providing? I don't know. You're from Cameroon. I have not seen artists from Cameroon very much out in like those spaces.
Correct.
Are there activities like archiving oral history that other people are not doing? Is podcasts going to be like your specialty in the Africans diasporic space in the Bay Area? To also like think about that. What can you provide that other people are not bringing, as the community is very large already?
Yes. I love how you touch about podcasts. Yeah, we are creating I don't know, we'll cut this out. This is just for us too. But we are creating a small space where, a second segment of self-reflection podcast, but just the Africans, highlight Africans, art, immigrants, entrepreneurs. That way we can also bring those artists up and African immigrants up in that space.
Yeah, I don't think anybody else in the Bay Area is doing that.
Yeah,
so
I
that
haven't
could
seen
be
it.
like your unique space that nobody else occupies.
I haven't seen that yet. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, very exciting. Yeah,
Yeah.
this conversation was great. Thank you so much again for joining me on Self Reflection Podcast. As we close up here, what is a reflection that you want to either share with yourself or share with our community? And you can do both.
I think it's the same reflection. Coming back to what I said at the top of the hour, more and more I'm realizing like the purpose of my life is ultimately, when I go to the real world center, is to continue to find my true voice and be authentic in order to be impactful.
Yeah.
And so I encourage everybody to do that. There are a lot of ways to do that, but I think the key of doing that is making sure you find regular quiet time. Develop a regular practice of walking, meditating, journaling, cooking. It could be for some people, dancing is your meditative time. And when you really live an authentic life, then what seems to be self-serving will become completely selfless. You will be able to serve the community at large in a very impactful way. I truly believe that every single one of us is on this earth to do great things. And it's a matter of finding what that destiny is. And that destiny can manifest in many physical ways. Maybe your thing is storytelling. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So, and it could evolve, right? But I think living authentically is the message I'm giving myself and giving to everyone who is listening.
Thank you. Thank you again for joining us on Self Reflection Podcast. I do hope you come back another time on Self Reflection Podcast and we can expand on this conversation.
Yes.
It's been wonderful. This is the stuff I love to talk about.
Thank you, Lira.
Thank you guys so much for joining me on Self Reflection Podcast. I hope that this conversation found you in a great light. And for all my immigrant brothers and sisters out there, I hope that you continue to evolve as you, stay in this country or anywhere else that you are in the world where you migrated to. Also believe in yourself, believe in your power, and also, our guest said today, right? Trust yourself. Whatever is inside of you, trust yourself and continue to shine your light unto others as well. I hope you have a blessed day. Take care of yourself, love yourself, be kind, and be gentle with yourself. Until next time, this is your girl, Lira, and you're listening to Self Reflection Podcast. Ta-da!